and today we're going to talk about Season 10 of classic Doctor Who. So Season 10 is a fantastic season. I think it is one of Pertwee's two strongest seasons. I think if most people were picking Pertwee's best season, they'd probably be picking between 7 and 10. Not necessarily, but those are the two I seem to see come up the most. And Season 10 is a strong season, the 10th anniversary of the show, which is celebrated with its first story. It just feels like a well-oiled machine at this point. Everybody knows what they're doing. Pertwee has got his doctor figured out. Joe has got, Katie has gotten Joe figured out. Barry and Terrence know exactly what they're doing and what they want to do. Roger Delgado is, of course, fantastic as the master. He always has been. I mean, all of these things have always worked well, but everything is running like a well-oiled machine. The Doctor, of course, finally gets his ability to time travel back in the first story, and then we get to see the a nice variety of stories, and really, even if you think about it, a nice 12-part epic, almost, with Space War, which, of course, Frontier in Space and Planet of the Daleks basically tie in together. I mean, they really are separate stories, but with one leading in to the next. It kind of gives it this epic feel to it, to where some people just like to watch all 12 episodes together. I know one of my patrons, Steven, that's what he thinks of it as, Space War. He likes to watch all 12 episodes as one massive epic. Whereas I, on the other hand, can easily just watch them as one 6-parter or another 6-parter. I don't have to watch them all together. That's going to vary from fan to fan. It's nice that they attempt to do that, though, to give us another kind of 12-part epic adventure in those two stories. And, of course, one of the best companion departures the show has ever done, which is very well executed, and very well written, and very well performed. It's just a strong season. I do like the variety of stories. I love the 3 Doctors. And, this is the first time we get a multi-Doctor story. And it's such a fascinating idea for this person who can change appearance and regenerate themselves and have different actors play the character, who's also a time traveler. It makes so much sense that he should be able to meet other versions of himself. That is such a clever idea. You're just like, wow, of course, that's the obvious thing to do. And bringing back William Hartnell for what he's in it for, and Patrick Troughton, is fantastic. And I'm glad they both agreed to do it. And I'm glad they were able to use Hartnell to the degree they were. His health, of course, was in decline at the time. But that being said, his acting is phenomenal. What William Hartnell does, when you understand the behind the scenes and his health and the situation, his performance is fantastic. He puts in a solid performance doing that. And I love the decision to make the second and third Doctors squabble and not get along. The fact that they butt heads the way they do. I love that. I absolutely love that. One of my favorite scenes in all of Doctor Who is that scene in the TARDIS when the second Doctor first shows up and they're just basically arguing. It's hilarious. It's absolutely hilarious. It's a song by the Beatles. Oh, how's it go? Oh, do be quiet. You don't mind if I talk to her, do you? Well, actually, I don't. I didn't think you would. I love all of that. I absolutely love that. John and Patrick are just so good together. I love the fact that we get Benton in the TARDIS and the Brigadier in the TARDIS. Finally, just finally. I love that. That is so good. I love the concept of Omega. And Stephen Thorne does a very good job playing this version of Omega. This very full of himself, egotistical character. Of course, the only reason he exists is because his will insists he does. That's clever. An excellent twist. I love that. And it being antimatter and how it's weakening the Time Lords and how they have to violate the laws so he can meet. The location work looks really nice. Some criticisms, the little crustaceous creatures that work for Omega are a little shoddy looking. Let's be honest. 3 Doctors really is a story that could use some updated effects, I'll be honest. I think Cunning Monkey or someone online has done updated effects for it, and they really give it a punch. It could use some updated effects. It just makes it look better. Because some of the effects are a bit naffed. And the design on those creatures is definitely a bit naffed. We let it go. It's classic Doctor Who. My biggest problem is the Brigadier is written a bit dense in this and a bit comical. He feels more like comic relief, and I don't like when they do that with the Brigadier. I'm not saying this is the only story that does that. Some of them do. But, you know, sometimes the Brigadier is written so intelligently, and other times he's written to where he just doesn't see the obvious. Like, as many things as the Brigadier has seen, and considering how trusting he is of the Doctor, even early on with the second Doctor, it's so odd that he seems so stubborn to accept what's going on around him. I mean, some of his lines aren't funny, but I don't like the Brigadier as a whole being treated like that in this story. That's my biggest problem. But it's a lot of fun. I enjoy the guest cast, the guy playing the professor when he's like, you know, don't think I'll write about this, though. And, what was it, Mr. Ollis meeting his wife? Mr. Ollis is still, the actor playing him just turned 100 recently. He's still aroused, 100 years old. I like that. Where have you been? He's just like, you'd never believe me. It's a lot of fun, the Three Doctors. It's my favorite multi-Doctor story. I think it's written well. I think it's paced well at 4 parts. It's got a great antagonist. And, of course, all 3 Doctors are putting in a really good performance. I think after that, you come to what could be the most underrated gem of the Pertwee era with Carnival of Monsters, which, of course, is Robert Holmes, the best writer the show has ever had. I like Carnival of Monsters a lot. I've talked about it a lot on the channel. The Doctor, now that he's gotten his ability to travel back, we go straight from an Earth unit story, well, somewhat of an Earth unit story. We go to an alien planet story, and Robert Holmes is really good with his double acts, of course, with the guy who's kind of the ringleader of the carnival and his assistant. I like them and their colorful outfits. I like everything going on in the B plot with the people on the planet with the blue skin trying to take over, you know, a possible coup to overthrow, to take over. I like their unique manner of speak. I tend to love when Doctor Who does a unique manner of speak. It's one of the things I love about Paradise Towers as well. One has twinges. I like things like that. It's just a nice little touch. Their performances are really good. I love the concept and the execution of the Dreshigs. They are a cool design. I think they're actually executed pretty well on screen. Considering this is Classic Who, I think they come across pretty well. I like kind of the sounds they make, and I love just the concept of them as a creature. Once they get your scent, I like that. The idea of the little microscope is a cool idea. That's a neat little concept. Very Robert Holmes, a very dark theme thing. Very Robert Holmes. I feel like Carnival of Monsters is one of those stories that doesn't get talked about as much as it should, because it's up there with the greats. But, you know, when people who watch modern Who are, you know, catching the cliff notes of Classic Who, stuff like Genesis, Caves, 5 Doctors, 3 Doctors, An Unearthly Child, The Dalek, you know, the more popular stories they hear about, I feel like Carnival of Monsters might get lost in the shuffle because it's not mentioned in those conversations. While it's just as good as those stories, as a lot of those stories, it's really good. It's got really tight pacing, really good dialogue. And we have Ian Marter in his first role in Doctor Who, I believe, as well. It's great to see him on this. And figuring out what's going on the boat, it's nice how all of that comes together. It's just a really underappreciated story. And then we go into, of course, the massive 2-parter that is the Space War with Frontier in Space. I like Frontier in Space. I think it's paced. It's a bit long while also having a very abrupt ending. I love the Draconians, though. I love their outfits. I know John Pertwee was a big fan of the Draconians. I love their outfits, too. The makeup for them, the little half mask is very impressive. It works really well. And I love the fact they're not the bad guys. They're another race like the humans, that kind of noble race like the humans who want to avoid the war. They're just getting manipulated into the war, of course, by the Daleks' master and the Ogrons. I like having the Ogrons back, too. I kind of like that little bit of continuity with having the Ogrons back, with them just kind of being hired help. I always like their outfits a lot, too, actually. So I like what's going on here and the little way they hypnotize people into seeing Draconians instead of Ogrons. That's cool. I love having the Master back. It's always wonderful to see Roger Delgado back. Of course, one of my nitpicks is that the ending is a bit rushed, just in general. Because they want to tie it in with Planet of the Daleks, it just ends very abruptly. I think the Doctor has that line of, get back to Earth and tell them about this, and that's kind of it. I wish there was more to that. And of course, Delgado's last scene is rushed, where he just kind of runs off because they didn't know it was going to be his last scene, sadly, because he passed away in that car accident not long after. But, you know, looking at that, I'm like, I wish he'd had a better final story, a better final scene, especially. There is a lot of them getting captured, getting free, getting captured, getting free, getting captured, getting free, which usually isn't a big deal to me. There's a lot of that in the War Games, but it bothers me a little more in this story than it does in some. But it's still a good story. Planet of the Daleks is next. It's really the only one that kind of lets it down for me. And Planet of the Daleks it's okay. I mean, it's not a bad story. It's possibly my least favorite. No, I won't say that because the chase exists. It's one of my least favorite Classic Who stories. It's better than the chase. It's very much, as people have said before, it's a rehash of the Daleks, but in color, including episode 3, which the color restoration for that looks really good, but I'm convinced it looks better on the DVD release than it does on the box set release, to be honest, because I do believe those are different restorations. I love having Bernard in it, because I tend to love when he shows up in Doctor Who. Of course, he's also in Deadly Assassin. Deadly Assassin? What word? Deadly Assassin. I don't know what happened there. He's also in the War Games, and he is in The Mind Robber. I like him as an actor. He just has this very authoritative voice, this very booming voice when he talks. Like, if that guy told me to do something, I'd listen. You, stand there and go get this. You got it. I mean, he talks, I'd listen. I don't know. Perfectly cast as the head Time Lord in the War Games. I just really like when he shows up in Doctor Who. So that is a bright spot of the episode for me. I think the rest of the guest cast is fine as well. Of course, John has his famous line about courage isn't just a matter of not being frightened, you know. And I love that dialogue. That could be my favorite. One of my favorite quotes from his Doctor. I absolutely love that bit. So it's nice to have that in the episode. That might actually be from episode 3. I forget. I don't know. I never quite get into Planet of the Daleks. It doesn't seem like it knows what it wants to do. You have the cliffhanger at the beginning with the invisible Dalek, which is a great cliffhanger if it wasn't for the fact the title of the story already gave it away. You know, Pertwee's like, Daleks! And I'm like, duh! You know, it's always interesting to me, the stories in Doctor Who where, you know, it has da-da-da of the Daleks, but the cliffhanger of the first episode is the Daleks showing up. It's like the audience is supposed to be like, this story that has Daleks in the title has Daleks in it. No! I don't know. That always gets me. I love that cliffhanger, though. I still do love that cliffhanger, believe it or not. But then they kind of abandon the invisibility thing, and then they work on their plague thing, and then the head Dalek, which is a prop from the movie, shows up, kills the other Dalek, because that's what Daleks do, the other former head Dalek, and takes over. And then after the plague thing, don't they try to do something with a bomb? I forget. Like I said, it just goes everywhere. Then you have the creatures that are invisible, but they're made to wear the cloaks, because that's one way to save on the budget, I guess. I mean, if you're invisible, don't you just throw off the cloak and run? I mean, can the Daleks see them when they're invisible? Do they have, like, infrared or something? Again, there's a lot not clear to this. If they had me in the cloaks and I was invisible, I think I'd... Oh, cloaks off. And then I'd explain to them a song by a flock of seagulls that involves running away. Except for I'd get away. Hopefully. I don't know. A lot of Planet of the Daleks just doesn't come together for me. The set looks nice. I mean, it's not exactly Planet of Evil set, don't get me wrong, but it still looks like a nice set. I like it well enough. But yeah, it's easily the weakest of the season for me, but it's okay. And then we have the Green Death. I like the Green Death, but I don't quite hold it in the esteem I used to. It's a good story. It has several nice political points, the dangers of pollution, and, of course, the dangers of AI, which is very prominent these days, actually. This story is actually still... I feel like the political points of this story ring true today, especially the dangers of AI. I like the finale, when Joe leaves. I think that their relationship is built up well, keeping in mind that when this was broadcast, it would have been built up over a 6-week period. So you had time to kind of develop, you know, watch Cliff and Joe develop together. I think Stuart Bevan is fantastic as Cliff Jones. I think he is very good in the role. He has that kind of 60s hippie, free love. No, I won't say free love, but, peace, not war attitude to him, which I like. His voice fits it perfectly. Him and Katie have great chemistry, which is hardly surprising since they were dating at the time. The actual finale is played so well by Pertwee. The way he doesn't say anything, how his expression sells it. I don't even think there's any dialogue there. I think it's just his acting, his physical acting, and what he's doing with his face when he doesn't say anything, with him walking away, getting in the car, just kind of pausing, and then driving off. It's a very solemn way to not only end the story, but also end the season, since that's the season finale. It's a bit anticlimactic, a bit of a downer. I like that, and I love the gumption it took to do that. I think the maggots are done really well. The maggot effects look very impressive, very impressive. I think people remember this one because of that a lot, the one with the maggots. Now, the adult maggot, the fly creature, does not work. That's naff. Let's just be honest, that doesn't hold up at all. Some of the CSO shots, like when Benton is, "Come get your din-din, Sergeant Benton." The CSO is very obviously CSO. There's some other CSO shots too, like the Brigadier on the walkie-talkie, that are very obviously CSO. We overlook that kind of thing. The guy playing Stevenson is really good. I really like him. The person voicing the boss is really good. The interesting thing on the story to me is the one guy who disappears partway through, the guy with the glasses and the mustache, because I do believe the actor in real life had appendicitis. So he kind of gets replaced by the other guy, the kind of balding guy, like halfway through the story, like 4 episodes through the story or something. And while he's a different character, he's kind of serving the same role. That always is a little weird. That's always a little weird to me. But I mean, what else could they do in that situation? But it always feels a little clunky in the story. But both of the actors are doing a good job. And then, of course, I love seeing Pertwee disguised as the cleaning lady. That's absolutely hilarious. And I absolutely love Yates's response when he sees him. "Oh, I love your purse." "Oh, do you?" I love that. And how when Yates gets away from him, he's just like, I like that. That's really, really good. And a great performance, of course, from Richard Franklin, who's very good as Mike Yates. I'm not the biggest fan of Yates as a character, but Richard always puts in a good performance. And so it's a good way to end the season, being back on Earth after 2 stories, really 3 stories out in space, if you think about it. So we had our unit story, which is some on Earth and some isn't. And then we had a nice space story with Carnival. And then we had Frontier in Space, which is on Earth part of it, but it's still more a space story. Planet of the Daleks is on an alien planet story with, of course, Green Death rounding out it with it being a more familiar contemporary Earth unit story. It's a nice variety in Season 10 with strong performances and strong writing. There's no really any bad stories in the bunch, with the weakest being Planet of the Daleks, which again isn't a bad story. Pertwee has no bad stories. I enjoy it a lot. My biggest gripe with the season was on the box set. The one they gave the updated effects to was Planet of the Daleks, which, one, I don't think needed updated effects. 2, the updated effects are terrible. They just look bad. They don't have the same polish and panache as most of the optional updated effects, especially the Blu-ray optional effects. I don't know what it is. They look terrible. Like, I know some people make the argument that they don't care for the updated effects because to them the updated effects just don't look right with that older style 70s, 80s, 60s footage. But usually it doesn't bother me. I think it's fine. For some reason in this story, I actually get that. The footage doesn't, the CGI updated effects just feel clunky in with the rest of the footage. The Dalek ship landing, for example, or taking off. The reveal of the invisible Dalek at the end of episode 1. That cliffhanger works so much better with the original version. Instead of the model Daleks, when you see the Army of Daleks, the CGI Army of Daleks looks awful. There's a couple of times it works with the updated effects. One is when they see all the eyes light up in the forest, when they look out and you see all the eyes of the animals in the forest. That looks better with the updated effects, I think. And then when John and one of the Thals are fighting a Dalek and it's showing it from the Dalek's point of view as the Dalek's trying to track them, that looks better with the updated effects. But for me, the rest of the effects look way better, considerably better with the original effects. It's one of the rare stories where I prefer the original version. There's only two. And you guys know Prowl likes him some updated effects, especially some updated laser blast. You know this. But of all of the stories that have gotten updated effects, I think I can only think of two off the top of my head that I straight up prefer the original effects. And one of those is Planet of the Daleks. If I'm going to watch it, I probably watch it with the original effects. Now, some of the stories I can watch with the original or the updated effects. I might prefer it with the updated effects, but sometimes I want to watch it with the original effects. Day of the Daleks, of course, being an example. Or The Five Doctors, where there's several different ways to watch those stories. It just depends on the one I'm in the mood for, even though I prefer them with the most recent updated effects both of those have had. The other one that I prefer the original effects is Planet of Fire. Part of that is I don't really care for the edited down version or the widescreen, which I love in Enlightenment, but I didn't like in Planet of Fire. And then I just don't care for those effects. They don't work for me for Planet of Fire. I much prefer the original version of that story. Yeah, the Planet of the Daleks, just updated effects, they just feel weird. They feel clunky. They don't work to me like they usually do to enhance the story. So yeah, that's season 10. The last, it's kind of the end of an era as a way, because season 11 is very different with, of course, Elizabeth coming in and, of course, Roger having passed away. And season 11 has this kind of sense of things coming to an end, things winding down, things changing. Season 11 has a very big feeling of change to it, where season 10 feels like a well-oiled machine. Everybody is settled into their parts. Everybody is settled into what they're supposed to be doing. Everybody knows what they're supposed to be doing at this point. Season 10 really has that feel to it of, you know, this isn't our first rodeo. We know what's going on. We know exactly what to do at this point. That's one of the reasons I think season 10 is considered as one of Pertwee's strongest seasons. So I want to know what you think of season 10 of Doctor Who with the Third Doctor. Comment down below and let's talk about it. Don't forget to click the like button and the subscribe button and the bell for notifications as well. I also have a P.O. box if there's anything you'd like to send me to look at and review. A link to my Amazon wish list is down there. A link to my Amazon UK wish list is also down there. If there's anything you'd like to send me to look at, I'd love for someone to send that season 1 steelbook. I would love to get it. It's just crazy overpriced, especially when you factor in importing. But if anyone would love to send that, I would love to have it and do a review of it, etc., etc. I also have a Patreon if you'd like to support me that way. There's a link to that down there. I want to give a shout out to Colin Coney, one of my top tier patrons. I appreciate his support as I do the support of all of my patrons. It's very much appreciated. And most importantly, thank you for watching.